Welcome to Local Leverage, your competitive edge in business. As always, this show is brought to you by PropertyRadar, the hyper-local lead generation platform for small local businesses. Today, we're sitting down with our very own Jacob Camhi, our Vice President of Growth Marketing at PropertyRadar, and the mind behind some of the most advanced growth strategies for small local businesses. Jacob's helped thousands of businesses tap into the power of public records, programmatic advertising, and hyperlocal marketing to find and win more customers faster and smarter. Let's get into it.
Mark, thanks so much for having me on, man. Super excited to be here and chat through everything we have planned today. It's awesome.
Me too. I mean, this is obviously a different format for us to kind of go internal, but you have been on the front end of trying a whole bunch of new technologies, both for PropertyRadar as a product, but also in promoting PropertyRadar to our audience. And so, you have a unique perspective to see both sides, and I figured it'd be really valuable to our audience to talk a bit more about what you're seeing and what your experiences have been specifically around online advertising.
Yeah, absolutely. Get the full spectrum. I love working with our users on online ads. We're doing some really cool things here at PropertyRadar with online ads, and yeah, can't wait to talk about it.
That's awesome. I mean, in this conversation, let's really, share the details. Let's share the sauce with the audience and get some value to them. And let's just start though at the very top. I mean, there's a lot of folks that this concept of online advertising, or certainly if it's phrased like programmatic advertising, is confusing at best and maybe worse. So let's, in simple terms, like what is this and how does it relate to small business?
Yeah, great question. So programmatic advertising, really just think about it as like the real-time buying and selling of digital ad space. So, there's a whole industry that's devoted solely to every time you go on a website or you visit an app, right? Ad space that's available on those websites is bought and sold in real time, and there's a whole industry behind that called the programmatic advertising industry. And it's something that has evolved over the last 20 years. Programmatic advertising, it used to just strictly be limited to some websites and some publishers, but in the last 10, 15 years, it's really prevalent. And if you've been on any website in the last 24 hours, odds are you've seen programmatic advertising ads that are bought and sold in real time that are tailored to you. So programmatic advertising in its simplest terms, just think about it as ads that are bought and sold on every website or every app you visit in real time.
Yeah, and you're doing this in a different way, which I think is really cool, unlike others. And so maybe you could differentiate kind of traditional online ads, like running an ad on Facebook or as a Google campaign, and how does this differ?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up because that when I speak with our users too who want to run online ads, that's the biggest question I get is, are these ads going to be on Facebook and Google? So the difference between how we look at online ads here at PropertyRadar and online ads, meaning every ad that you see on every website or Google, Facebook, social media. Online ads for us are where we tap into a network of what are called publishers. So anyone that is creating content, on their websites, think like the big sites that you visit, ESPN, People, Variety, Weather.com, right? Any big publisher of content is going to have advertising available. And that's for us where we're able to tap into what are called ad exchanges and access that inventory of ads that are available. The difference between those sites and Facebook and Google is Facebook and Google have their own what are called walled gardens. So, they have their own environments and ecosystems. They control their ad inventory. And really, at the end of the day, if you want to be running advertisements in Google or in Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, right, you'll have to go and purchase ads within those networks. But with programmatic advertising, what it allows you to do is these ad networks give you access to thousands and thousands of websites that in real time you can bid on ad space for. So that's the main difference between the two and how you actually access buying ads in each of those different spaces.
And if I understand it correctly, I mean, specifically around Facebook, they used to allow you to do a lot of targeting, but I think for various reasons they chose to kind of dumb down that targeting or not allow as much kind of direct hits. And so is that still the case? Is it still not as direct as what we're able to do with our online ads?
Yeah, so you're right in saying that. There was a whole host of legal action that was taken against Facebook that really ended up limiting what they could do in demographic targeting. And there's different ways that you can go about targeting. And I think maybe the better question is, what are the different types of targeting that you can run in sort of like a social type setting and as well as a programmatic online ad? They're very similar, right? Just one relies more on their own demographics, like Facebook, versus different qualities that you can track from websites and the ad networks on the programmatic side. So really the big difference is there's a level of individual targeting that in named account lists that it's much easier to run named targeted lists in a programmatic setting if you're able to upload that. And if you're running things in Facebook, yes, you can have retargeting audiences, and I'm sure we'll get into that at some point. But the biggest difference there is going to be you rely on Facebook's interpretation of behaviors on their platform and rely on them to make decisions for you versus the way that we run online ads. You're able to actually get a named list of property owners and target only those individuals. So that would be the main difference between the two types of targeting.
That's great, and I want to definitely tap into that a little bit later as we go. But I mean, when we're still talking about these ads, a lot of people might be familiar with retargeting ads, right? Where you're on Amazon and you're looking at a lawnmower, and then everywhere else you go for the next 2 weeks, the lawnmower ads are popping up, back to Amazon. Yeah. But this is different than retargeting. The ad space is the same, right? The form factor of those ads and where they're placed is the same or similar. But retargeting is different than a targeted audience, right?
Yeah. So great distinction you just made, retargeting versus having a targeted audience. So retargeting, think of the right? You're doing something again. So you're essentially, if you're retargeting somebody, the example that you just used is with cookies on your browser. You're essentially able to, like the main websites Amazon used for an example, you're able to, from those actions you're taking on websites, the cookies that are left on those sites that are tied to your IP address, right? They're able to go in and actually track those actions that you're taking. My favorite example is, let's say I wanted to buy a new pair of running shoes. I go and Google or go to Amazon and just type best running shoes for men size 13, right? That's what I wear. Going in and you've taken that action, and now they've collected that data, tied it to your IP address. So when you're browsing the internet, you're then retargeted with ads that matches that behavior that you took in that moment in time, right? So they're retargeting based on behaviors. When we say targeted and targeted outbound, that's a little bit different. So targeted outbound is where you're starting with a named list. And in our case at PropertyRadar, a named list of property owners, right? So you have information, you go, like the great thing about PropertyRadar, and not trying to sell or make this an ad, but you're able to go in and filter based on demographic information, property information, situational financial data, things like that, to create an exact list of owners that fit the criteria you're looking for as a marketer, that you then run ads to, rather than having a retargeting audience that you're basically serving ads to based on a behavior that they took on a different website. So two very different things.
What I think is so cool of that is that, big companies like the Amazons or these larger examples that we've talked about, I mean, they've had access to this kind of technology for a little while, but it has not been available or readily available to small businesses. But I think for a number of reasons. But what's changed? Maybe how did you go about creating this offering so that it was accessible to small businesses with smaller audiences?
Yeah, and just putting it blatantly, in order to access these audience networks and work with these online ad and programmatic providers, there oftentimes is a pretty steep financial minimum commitment that you'll have to make. And it's a steep barrier to entry that for a long time, has kept small businesses out of competing in this game with big businesses. I mean, if you think about it, how many times when you're browsing, a New York Times or weather.com, ESPN, you see programmatic display ads, little banner ads on those websites for your local businesses. I don't recall personally seeing anything like that. And, we, the marketing team, Mark, you were involved, Sean, our founder, was involved. We came together and we decided that this sort of access to this channel, there's a way that we could structure working and running these online ads on behalf of our larger client base and ourselves to actually democratize that access. And we're able to reach those, for lack of a better term, those steep minimum financial commitments that oftentimes are out of reach to individual small businesses. And we help you access that, from our offerings. So it's something that I've worked in several prop tech companies in my time. It's real estate CRMs. I just haven't seen an offering like this. It's one of the most unique offerings and competitive advantages that a small business can have is showing up in these online ads, these programmatic channels, because odds are your competition is not going to be showing up there. Really, the only people that have the ability to are going to be those large national brands that are out to destroy small business. And this is a channel that they use, and we're helping you guys fight back against them by giving you access to that same channel. So it's pretty amazing what we're able to do with that.
It's really cool. I mean, I think back in the days, when I first heard about programmatic advertising, the minimum audience sizes were still huge in comparison to like what a small business would go naturally target. I mean, you were required to do like 25,000 or 50,000 people in your audience to be able to get access to these networks and be able to place those ads. But now you can do it at a much, much smaller level. So in practical sense, how small can you go? Like what for types of clients that we're serving in kind of real estate centric businesses, like how big of an audience do I need? And I guess why is ultimately that targeted small list better than relying on kind of a generic audience selection tool?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll address your last question first. Why is a smaller audience better than this spray and pray generic? With targeted outbound, the intent is to be very intentional with who you're getting in front of, because for a lot of small businesses, they don't have room in their budget to just go blow their budget on spraying and praying their message out to everyone who theoretically could live in a certain area. And it's not realistic for small businesses to do something like that. So the more targeted that you can get, number one, it's a budgetary thing. Second, if you're going after every single person and trying to say the same thing, messaging the same thing to every single person in your market, that's not going to land. It's going to land with a very small percentage. So when you're thinking about starting targeted, making sure that you have a very specific segment within your audience or within your market that you're creating and crafting messaging to is how you're going to cut through the noise and stand out and be relevant, be neighborly. Yeah. That's the most important thing that you can do. So there's like a budgetary element to that, but there's also a messaging and relevancy piece to that too that I think is important.
It's kind of like that right message at the right time to the right group. Right?
Exactly. And to the second piece of your question, technically, you can go as small as a list of 500 people in an online ad, and that's going to give you a decent amount of reach, and you'll service a specific number of impressions, which we'll get into, I'm sure, at some point. But for us, we've really found the sweet spot for running online ads and creating an audience segment for our users. Really, is in that anywhere between 1,500 and 5,000 range. That's where not only do you get the relevancy, the segmentation is still clean enough and still targeted enough to have that like smaller audience feel, but you're able to generate awareness at a scale that for a lot of small businesses that we work with, an audience of 5,000, if they had 5,000 new customers, right? Or let's just say 1,000 of those 5,000 customers at some point were more familiar with them. For them, that's huge. That's significant, right? So we like to generally recommend it's anywhere between that 1,500 to 5,000 list sizes is right in the sweet spot.
Awesome. I mean, and that feels like a very realistic audience size for most small businesses. I mean, I can build a budget around that. I can build focus around that kind of an audience where, chasing 50,000 for most small businesses is not realistic because you just don't have the dollars to put behind it.
Exactly. That is the window, I would say, that you're going to get the most effective and efficient performance for the spend that you have running online ads as part of a larger targeted outbound campaign. That's absolutely where you want to be.
So take me through how they make the sausage here. So, I mean, let's say I give you this audience of, let's say 2,000, targeted individuals, and I have a, very tight message for that group.
Yep.
How do you go about matching or finding these people? How do you serve these ads up just to those people and not to anybody else? And just take me through that whole process.
Yeah. So the cool thing about the way that we run online ads is essentially the process from beginning to end is, let's say I'm a PropertyRadar user, or, I have a very specific list of individuals that I want to go after. Because of the fact that we access public data and public records information, not only do we have first name, last name, but we also have phone numbers, we also have emails, and we also have physical addresses. And the way that ad networks function is essentially they have identity mapping, and you create an identity graph around each individual. So the more data points that I have that I can track back to an individual property or property owner, the more likely I am to identify successfully and target that owner with all of that information that I have on them. For us, I like to, again, not trying to, sell too hard here, but we on average will get, anywhere from 85 to 95% match rates with our lists, because we have access to all of that demographic, firmographic data on these people. So, typically industry standard is, if I'm running a list, if I get a 50 to 60% match rate, I'm pretty stoked with that. But with us, we generally see 85 to 95%. So once we have
crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing. As a someone who runs also PropertyRadar's marketing, that for me is it's amazing. So once you have that list, you then are able to, you've uploaded it into the audience network, you get your matches back, and at the same time, you're creating online ads. And in our case, we actually have a design team that can work with our users to create these online ads. So online ads actually come in a variety of different formats, right? You have some that are rectangular and tall. You have some that are square and in the middle of the page, right? So what we do, what's worked best for us, is we actually have 4 different variants of ads that we make that line up with the most common ad sizes. Now, why do we do that? The reason being is because if they're the most common ad sizes, that gives you the best chance of winning that auction and being in front of the user in as many places as possible, right? If we were going after some, abnormal ad type, you would only show up where that ad type is served, which is probably not going to be on very many websites. So having the most common ad types really allows you to stay in front of the user across a variety of places. Yeah.
So if I'm just to break this down, make sure I'm understanding that audience is understanding it. So if I'm in that targeted audience list, you're able to match me, not to just identify that this is Mark, but here are all the devices that are attached to Mark, my phone, my computer, my smart TV, all these other items. And you don't need to know that I'm going to ESPN or that I'm going to USA Today. You're rather just in real time recognizing that I'm on USA Today and finding one of those 4 form factors and slotting in ads so that I see them.
And remember what we talked about earlier, this is all real-time auction, real-time bidding is what it's called. So in real time, because I've been able to identify, the audience networks have been able to identify who you are, the devices that belong to you, the moment that you're visiting a site, in milliseconds, this bidding and auction process happens where essentially the winning ad, the one who bids the highest for that individual ad space, will be served to you, Mark, on that device, on that website in real time. Exactly.
Yeah, I think for so many people that sounds just crazy, and to have access to that as a small business. I mean, of course, we experience that day in and day out from big companies, but that's just really amazing. So for a small business, what are the real advantages of being able to utilize online ads in this way? I mean, how is this enabling me to compete with maybe bigger brands or other companies, competitors with much larger budgets?
Yeah, I like that angle on it. Like, how can it compete with bigger brands? But actually, I think maybe we should look at it as, how do online ads help me as a smaller marketer get the most efficient return and effective return from my ad spend? Of course, like in these kind of channels, you're going to be competing with big business for ad space, etc. But I want to actually take it back more towards, why does this work so well in helping my marketing become more effective across multiple channels? So,
great.
Online ads in general, when we talk about online ads here at Property Radar, we view it as a tool that helps elevate the effectiveness of more targeted direct outreach over the course of a targeted outbound campaign. So let me explain what I mean by that. Online ads are the single most effective way to generate impressions in your market. You're not going to come close in terms of CPMs, which essentially is a metric that measures the cost that you're spending to get in front of 1,000 people, right? So the CPMs that you see with online ads are significantly lower than other forms of advertising. So
when you talk to CPM, that's cost per thousand impressions?
Yes, cost per thousand. So it's that's a metric that marketers will use essentially to measure how effectively they can generate reach and get in front of a larger audience. That's the metric that they'll use to track that. And so with that, right, because you have this tool that this online ad channel that not only you identify exactly who's on your list and only advertise to them, but you're showing up in real time where they're browsing across multiple devices. You're going to be in front of them in multiple different places, which when I speak with our users, they're like, okay, well, how do I structure my campaign? How do I order things, right? Online ads is always going to be the best place to start, especially with a cold audience, because remember, your job with a cold audience, people who've never heard of you before, your job is to generate that familiarity. It's to get in front of them and stand out with relevant messaging, but get in front of them a certain number of times up front so they're familiar with you. Because when you start thinking about direct mail and email and phone relative to online ads, they are more expensive, they're more labor intensive, sure, right? It costs more to run those types of channels. So like, if I'm a marketer, I want to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can to make the ad spend that I have on my more expensive channels more effective. And the way that I can do that is by running online ads to that same list, that targeted list of owners, anywhere between 1,500 and 5,000 people. I run online ads to that list for 10 to 14 days. I generate anywhere from 5 to 10 impressions at 10 cents per prop. Like, that the economics on that are so much more they're friendlier to me, the small business owner, with maybe not tons of budget to blow, because then when I've set that 5 to 10 impressions initially, then instead of sending direct mail and email to a list they've never heard of me, they're familiar with me. And if I do it right, I'll take all of the visual cues, all of the messaging, the colors, the branding from that online ad, and use that in my direct mail piece to create that continuity across channels. So that way, when they see that direct mail postcard, they'll be like, clicks. I've seen this before. Like, this was on when I was on ESPN the other day. Like, I recognize this. And with that, typically we've generally seen, we're starting to get some initial feedback back from our users as to what the incremental lift or increase in effectiveness and performance in direct mail. We generally see anywhere from an 18 to 20% lift in direct mail effectiveness by running online ads, right? So it's pretty.
That's amazing. So I think from what I'm getting out of that, you're using this as a strategy to warm up that audience, and then even throughout the rest of your other channels, campaigns, you're using it for just ongoing trust building, right? Just awareness and
ongoing.
And
yep. So you launch your online ads, you run these direct channels, and then if you're seeing the return, you leave them on as a supporting, like this bedrock, this ongoing, always on evergreen campaign that's always running to your list. So that way it's always supporting the more direct channels that you're running.
So when you're evaluating, I mean, being able to tie it maybe to the increase of effectiveness on direct mail, that makes a ton of sense to me. Probably difficult to measure and be able to say that thing did it. But when I get fed these ads, and maybe use your shoe example. If I was out searching for shoes and now I'm seeing little shoe ads pop up in my ESPN feed or whatever it might be, I don't find myself often clicking on those ads, but to your point, it is making some impression on me. I am seeing that, and then maybe I go back to that original storefront where I was doing research to actually make a purchase. Yeah. I guess where I'm going with that is, how do you measure this? How do you determine the effectiveness of it? What are the KPIs that matter? Because maybe it's not me actually clicking and buying from that ad, but rather it's, how is that affecting these other things I'm doing?
Yeah, great question. I'll answer this pretty simply. I'll have conversations with our users, and I will straight up tell them, let's say, Mark, you're my user. Mark, I won't be able to sleep at night unless I say this to you. If you're looking at online ads and measuring leads that come directly from online ads, that is the worst thing that you can do, right? And they always look at me, they're like, what do you mean? We're running marketing, like leads are the result of marketing, right? And it's an interesting conversation that I have, because when we think about, like, as a small business owner, maybe you don't have as much experience in sort of this direct digital type marketing. Like, you're always going to want leads from the marketing spend that you're running. Like, that's the main goal, right? But with online ads as a standalone channel, like, number one, always make sure that you're running online ads in tandem or in conjunction or simultaneously with other more direct channels like direct mail, email. Online ads as a standalone channel should never, ever, at least in the way that we do it here in PropertyRadar for our users and for ourselves with targeted outbound, it shouldn't be used as a direct measure. Leads should never be a direct measure of online ads performance. It should always be, did I achieve the target impressions per property on this list, going back to the 1,000 list mark, 1,500 list mark? If I run an online ads campaign and I generate 5 to 10 impressions or that list of 1,500 properties, that to me is a successful campaign that I then can go run more direct channels to. Want to just stay away from the trap of looking at things only like clicks and landing page views and converting, like for our loan officers that we work with, number of contracts that came from an online ad. You don't want to be doing that. You'll set yourself up for failure, because that's not what online ads are meant for.
All right. So I got to look at it more holistically around that audience or that campaign through a multi-channel kind of approach.
Yeah, like if I'm measuring an online ad's effectiveness, if I had, which is in a perfect scenario, I would run 2 campaigns to similar lists, right? I would have a campaign that I'm running to cold lists, to 2 cold lists. I'd have a direct mail, email, phone marketing campaign, and then I would have a campaign that has online ads, direct mail, emails, and phone calls, right? And I would run them same time, same frequency, same spend, right? Relatively, accounting for online ads. And I would look at the number of qualified conversations and the number of what we would call sales accepted leads, someone who shows promise for potentially being a closed deal, closed one customer. I would look at the number of conversations that I have like that from my direct mail, or that come to me from direct mail, phone calls and emails, versus the campaign that doesn't have online ads warming up that same cold audience, and see what the difference looks like. To me, that's the easiest experiment that you can run that can directly show you the impact that online ads have as a channel, with and without, in those 2 separate scenarios.
I like that. I mean, it's a very simple A/B test, and then I don't know if it's my budget and I see material improvement for the one that has online ads, that's all I need to know. Now I'm just going to not, do that testing anymore. I'm going to, maximize my audience and make that spend, because at the end of the day, this is also pretty inexpensive to do. And I guess maybe that's where I'd like to go next, is like, when you're thinking about online ads as an add-on to a multi-channel approach, what kind of budget do I need? Let's just take that audience of 1,500 or 2,000. How much more money am I talking to reach them, and how many impressions am I going to make?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Our general rule is, like if you're thinking about what online ads, adding in online ads could be for your campaign, we would recommend factoring in 10 to 15% additional budget. Remember, it's extremely cheap and effective to reach these leads at scale, 10 cents per property. So for a list of 500, list of 500 properties, that would be $50 on online ads. If you're thinking about postcards, every postcards, I think, we're starting like for 6x9, it's in, the 50 to 60, 68% range, or 68 cent range. So think about it in terms like that, right? If you're sending that same postcard to, 500 users, multiply 500 by 0.6, and, you can come up with your budget that way. But generally our rule is we like to allocate to start, and this is to start, 10 to 15% of your budget to online ads. And the great thing is, like, if you want to, at some point think about adding to your budget, all you'll do is add more properties to your list, and you'll still get the same, the amount of reach for that same price. So it's really straightforward and easy to do.
And when I place those ads, you mentioned the kind of the 10 cent a property, how many times am I going to serve up an ad to that individual?
Yeah. So over the lifetime of a campaign, which typically for us, we'll run anywhere from 10 to 14 days, just depending on various factors. But we generally see it's 10 to 14 days. On our promise on all online ad orders is that we will our guarantee is that we will hit at least 5 impressions per property on that list. So if you have a list of 500 properties, right, we guarantee at least 2,500 impressions total for that entire list over the course of 10 to 14 days. On the higher end, we've seen campaigns get anywhere from 7 to 8 to even 10 impressions per property, and that's where we typically will cap out, because anything more than that, you're over serving and you're inundating your leads with ads, and you don't want to set a negative impression by being in front of them too often, right? So 5 to 10 is our benchmark.
It's super cost effective. If I'm thinking about the math, like that 10 cents for 5 to maybe 10 impressions, where you're talking about at worst 2 pennies per impression, and at best a penny an impression. Like that seems like a easy thing to rationalize as another touch point in my multi-channel outreach. That's really amazing.
Yeah, it's now that we've started using online ads across our users and ourselves, it's one of those things where if I'm running a targeted outbound campaign and I want to run direct mail, or I want to run email, I'm almost hesitant to do it if I haven't warmed up that audience ahead of time with online ads. That's kind of where I'm at personally.
Yeah. Well, to your point, you're, if you're going to do a higher cost touch, whether that be direct mail or picking up a phone and having somebody call these prospects, those are expensive, expensive in time or expensive in resource, and so anything you could do to warm it up makes a ton of sense. Okay, you've been doing this, for PropertyRadar as well, trying to generate our own leads, and I'm sure you've had some mistakes along the way. I'm sure you've had some learnings to get to best practice. Like, what's some of the secret sauce for our audience? Like, how can they get the best results out of this, beyond using it? Like, what is it about an online ad that makes it good or bad? Help them cut through that. How do we get to success faster?
I think it's funny, the single, it may sound a bit elementary, but the single biggest thing that for me has hurt an online ads campaign, you have to remember online ads are small. Like, they are relatively small. Yes, they do take up real estate on the page you're on, but I've made the mistake of trying to just cram a bunch of copy into online ads, thinking my message is solid. I know that this is the exact pain that they're feeling, and here's like this compelling messaging around it, in this online ad that's really like 300 by 200 pixels right on a screen. Right. You see it, but like, it's a small space. Right. The worst thing that you can do is overcomplicate and uh, like almost overpopulate an online ad, because you have to remember that this is on their screen for maybe 2 seconds, right? They're scrolling or they're reading something else. It's on the side. You have like 2 seconds to capture their attention, and you have 2 seconds to capture their attention in a very confined way in an online ad. So like we only recommend at most using 5 to 7 words on an online ad, right? Because if you go any more than that, your online ad is going to look like, one of those, cramped, looks like line by line, and it's hard to even read. So design choices and messaging, and knowing how to like really distill your messaging down to 5 to 7 words in an online ad is going to be super important to help performance. And you need a very prominent call to action. Now, call to action can be defined as a couple different things. A call to action, in an emotional sense, is something that moves us or compels us to take action on a product. In how I'm describing it now, a call to action is the literal button that says, see more, learn more, contact me, contact us, right? Making sure that you have a very strong CTA that aligns not only with the message that you have on the online ad, but that next step that you wanted to take, right? Like if I had, a CTA on an online ad that was like, click here to watch video, and then I take them to, as a loan officer, a pre-qualification form, that's a disjointed journey. So that brings me to my next point of things that I've learned. Consistency across physical and digital space is what makes or breaks a campaign from day one. So if your messaging in online ads is different than what you're running in the physical space with direct mail, which is a little different than what you're running in email, and in your phone calls, you're saying something a little different, it creates a disjointed user experience, or, customer experience, and you lose them at the beginning, halfway through the journey, before they've even had a chance to really understand what your core offering is. So clarity, consistency are going to be the 2 things that I've learned and have had struggles with in the past. Let's think about consistency in running a targeted outbound channel, or a targeted outbound campaign. You're running campaign with messaging that has to hit for an online ad. You also have messaging that you need to take and remain constant and have similarities, and branding's the same, and it has to translate into a physical postcard. Then you also have to figure out the best way to convert that into an email, right? Then how do you make a phone script that's compelling from a headline in an online ad that had 6 words, right? So there's a lot of things that you really have to do a lot of planning around with messaging. You have to make sure that the way you're packaging up your messaging makes the most sense for every channel, but tells a cohesive story that, for lack of a better term, repeats itself at every touch point to drive home that message with the end consumer, with your customer. When you think about it, that for me, luckily I have a team, but if I'm doing that solo, it's going to take very intentional message mapping. It's going to take a very intentional understanding of how I want to use each of these channels to compel an action. And it's going to take refinement. It's going to take learning. You mentioned testing earlier. Like if I'm going in and I know that my online ads are driving tons of impressions, and therefore the direct mail that I'm sending is driving tons of QR scans to my pre-application page, but my emails are going unread, like I know something's broken there, right? So you really just have to have a close eye, consistently evaluate your channels, and make sure that you're trying and experimenting with things that will get you to a point where each channel is functioning to the highest degree. When we were here, doing this at PropertyRadar, our mantra really is, if we're standing up a multi-channel campaign or trying to do things across multiple channels, we need to make sure that as a team, we feel very, very good about the intentionality and the execution for every individual channel before we incorporate it into our marketing mix. The worst thing that I could do is say, you know what, I'm going to start running targeted outbound, but I've never run direct mail, and I'm just going to wing it. I'm just going to try and see, of course, there's a level of experimentation that has to do with trying new things, but you want to make sure that you're very familiar with the channel, that you look for inspiration of postcards you've received or things that have worked well for you, right? You just don't want to go in very blind. And again, luckily for us here, we have a design team, we have a marketing team that will actually work with our users, that have experience, in a success team, that will work with the users. And all of us have experience in every channel that we run targeted outbound for. So, luckily there's a guide that we have in place to help out our users, which is super cool.
That's awesome. That's a lot of great stuff there. Thanks for sharing kind of the behind the scenes. So, I mean, this in itself is really amazing and exciting as a small business marketer to have access to this. But as you look out over what's happening in this space, what do you see kind of coming? What's on the horizon that makes it, potentially even better? Like, where does this go from here?
Yeah, I'll speak to online ads in particular. I mean, the next step for us, there's multiple formats of online ads. Display ads, what we've been talking about this whole time, like that's one element of what an online ad could be. There's also things like audio ads. There's also things like video ads. And if, there's a future where all of those are bundled together and you're able to create like online ads that have similar branding elements through audio, through video, through display, picture type static ads, that to me is what's next, and really what would take this channel to the next level for both us and our users, in my opinion.
That's awesome. I'm starting to see little glimmers of that. I mean, even in display ads, I'm starting to see motion or video. Yeah. And then I think I'm maybe just more aware of it now, but I've also noticed, when I'm at home at night and turn on Roku, I'm getting ads that are pretty darn specific, and so I think, man, the ability for now, again, small business to have access to that same thing, that's really powerful and crazy.
I don't want to say the word unprecedented, but I truly believe that in my experience, both, I started my career in programmatic advertising consulting, right? Like I've been there, I've worked at prop tech companies, I've worked here. I've just never seen an offering that was open to small businesses like this at this scale to run online ads to 500 or 1,000 or 5,000 people. I say this on almost all my calls too with my users, like I can't, it's always funny, like you never want to guarantee because your word could be, I would say, I guarantee that your competitors are not running online ads like this. And I can feel good about saying that because it's not something that.
How would they?
Yeah, how would they? Right. And luckily we give you that ability, and I can, it's funny. I always get the same laugh when I say that. They're like, all right, like, now we're talking, like, let's do this. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay. So, to wrap this, if somebody wants to learn more about this or start testing it out for themselves, what's next step? How do they do this?
Yeah, next step, let's just focus on how you do this in PropertyRadar. If I'm going in and I have lists that I've built in PropertyRadar that I want to make sure I'm advertising, getting in front of, and running targeted outbound campaigns to, really it's you go into your list and you place an online ad order. Our team gets the order, we reach out, we do all the design work for you. You don't have to worry about a single thing. You can either choose a template, you can upload your own design, you can even describe what, the ad that you want to our designer, and he will go in and make that ad for you. We have revisions that are included as part of this process. And once we feel good about the ads, once we get the approval from you, we have a call if you'd like. It's an online ads kickoff call. We go through the whole process. We talk about all the different timing, the milestones, what to expect. The reporting that you'll get after your ads campaign is completed. And, once we have that kickoff call, that meeting, we go ahead and submit all of your, the ads and the lists to the ad networks. Once those get approved, which is typically a 24 to 48 hour turnaround, super quick, your ads will start serving to your list, and that's the start. And really, from beginning to end, in less than 5 days, most times you will have gone from just having a list to starting your online ads and serving online ads to where your leads are browsing online. It's really that easy, and it's pretty straightforward.
That's really cool. And then I suppose if, thinking about your example with a loan officer, if I've got prior customers that are folks that I just want to keep my brand in front of. I suppose I could import that list and serve up online ads on an ongoing basis to that group as well.
That's one of my favorite use cases. And I know we're wrapping here, but this is one of the key things that I would also make sure that if I'm running online ads, that I know this. With PropertyRadar, you're able to import lists of leads, and you then have them as a list in PropertyRadar, and we're able to append our data, right? If I'm a loan officer, let's just use that example, and I have a list of past clients that I've closed loans for, and let's say I have a couple hundred of these people, and some of them bought their home 5 years ago and are looking to move, or some bought their home 2 years ago and are looking to refi. All that I do is I go to PropertyRadar, I take my list of past clients, I upload it, I have all their property information, owner information, everything that I need just by uploading that list. Then take that list, place the online ads order, stay in front of them, keep that as an always on campaign, submit the order every month. And from there, you're going to stay in front of your leads for much more cheaply than any other type of marketing will. And you stay top of mind. So when that refi happens, or when they're looking to sell their home and buy a new home, you're going to be their first call. It's really that straightforward. It's one of my favorite use cases that I see.
That's super cool. Super cool. Jacob, thanks so much for sharing all this detail. And again, you're in such a unique position to both be actively running these, for your own lead generation activities for our company, as well as overseeing this for many small businesses. So I think you just have, such a powerful vantage point. And so thanks for unpacking this, making it understandable, and sharing some of your secrets.
Yeah, Mark, thanks so much. For the audience, I've been trying to get on local leverage for months now. Mark finally got my spot, so I'm just happy I could be on here with you guys. Yeah, thanks again, Mark. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll do it again. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.